What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Crunch Time here on RotoGrinders, brought to you by our sponsor, Fanduel. I can confirm the NBA slate does appear to be working, Justin. I'm not sure if you were aware of the NFL fiasco, but it does look like NBA is working. Thankfully, Fanduel got that figured out. Welcome. I'm Britt Devine here with my friend Justin Van Zuden, STL Cards 84. Justin, it's been a minute since we've done a show. You got the fresh cut. You got a Diet Coke. Nothing's changed, my friend.
Yeah, same old, I guess. It's been a while since we've done a show together, so it's a busy day on the sports calendar. Hopefully the NBA slate runs smoothly tonight. 6 games, kind of nice size slate for NBA purposes. So should be a fun night with 6 NBA games and another football game on this evening.
Yeah, and I'm back for my second show. Not to be outdone, I will be back for a third show for the NFL show just slightly after this one finishes. But we have basketball to talk. I am waiting. It's a little quiet in the injury for like a Saturday, Justin, if you ask me. So we're waiting on Mitchell in Cleveland. We're waiting on a couple of these Minnesota guys. I think I'm treating the Minnesota players. I know they're all game time decisions. Edwards is the main one, but you got Torian Prince and a couple others. I think they're all probably going to play. I'm waiting on Donovan Mitchell. We're waiting on Tobias Harris and Lauri Markkanen. Both of those could be not really. I mean, the Lauri Markkanen might be a game changer. Harris, not too much. And then we're waiting on Christian Wood, Damian Lillard. I'm expecting Damian Lillard to probably play. Wood, we'll have to see. I believe he has a back-to-back tomorrow. So that is a little bit up in question. What's the biggest news? Do you have any leans on any of these guys playing, not playing? Because Donovan Mitchell would be a fine play. We're not really targeting him. Darius Garland's probably going to be a must play if he sits. That's probably the big one I'm waiting on, right?
Yeah, it's for that reason. It's not necessarily because Mitchell is this standout play. It's just that if Mitchell is out, then you've got other options with Garland and LeVert that become much better plays. So, Mitchell's too expensive probably to play tonight anyway. Doesn't project all that well, and he's got an illness. So even if he does go, maybe he doesn't quite see his full minutes. But that's definitely the big one to monitor in the event that he is out. I'm kind of treating it right now as though all these questionable guys are going to play. I mean, Edwards has been playing through a questionable tag for what seems like a month. Lillard had a questionable tag the other night and then scored 50. So, he seems to be just fine. So I don't really have a strong lean. I'm kind of leaning towards all of them playing. I don't think it really affects your cash build all that much, other than, you maybe want to move some things around if Mitchell sits. But, we got Pacers news here before we came on the air. So Turner's out again. So that's, good for at least knowing what we have for value there. Of course, Halliburton's out. That game has a 240 total. So, you can get your particular cash game value with a lot of those Indiana guys, and you don't really have to mess with these spots, but it is worth keeping an eye on Mitchell and if any of the others do happen to get ruled out.
Yeah, so let's roll this over into some quick cash game discussion on FanDuel. You mentioned some of the Pacers values. I think maybe I'll throw it to you. I have my thoughts, but in terms of, I've got 3 here locked on FanDuel. Isaiah Jackson, he's 3K on DraftKings. You're probably going to want to play him. You've got Buddy Hield, and you've got Nembhard, who's probably a much better play on DraftKings at 4,600 than he is on FanDuel. But I think even at 5,700 on FanDuel is still very, very viable in the cash games. In terms of the players you want to use, to me, it's probably Jackson, Hield, and then Nembhard. Would you rank them the same from the Pacers right now?
I mean, Jackson is clearly the number one guy. I maybe put Nembhard second, but it's really close between him and Hield. And Nembhard, the issue with him, he didn't produce that much last night, but he did play 33 minutes and he was 2 for 16 from the field. So he's not going to shoot 2 for 16 again. I do agree that he's a slightly better play on DraftKings, but even at that price on FanDuel, I think those 3 guys are your cash game targets. Mathurin maybe as well. Jalen Smith and McConnell kind of enter the conversation a little bit on DraftKings too. But on FanDuel, Jackson, Hield, Nembhard, those are probably the 3 guys that you want to look at.
Yeah, I want to throw in another guy I'm really high on tonight from both DFS and sports betting is Marcus Smart. So I know our projections like him. I like him too. In his last 5 games without Jaylen Brown cards, he has 5 double-doubles. So if you're looking at from the assists or rebounds, I bet him to get, I think his points line is over 13.5. He's gone over that in his last 5 games without Jaylen Brown as well. So I like that. I bet on him to get a double-double. I think it wasn't FanDuel had decent odds. I think DK had the best one when I bet that. But I like Marcus Smart, huge minutes. We have him at 35. I think that's like about as low as he can play. I think there's room for him to play even more with Jaylen Brown out if this game is competitive. So he's someone I'm really liking on both sites today. You mix in a couple other guys you might want to be looking at. You can maybe want to play Derek White too. He should get some decent run here for the Celtics. Darius Garland specifically on FanDuel. What is he, 7,900 with or without Donovan Mitchell? I think is going to be a fine play. And if Donovan Mitchell sits, we're going to be playing him on all sites, locking in 100% in tournaments. I'm expecting him to have an absolutely big game. I want to ask you about Lauri Markkanen because he's like fits in my FanDuel build, and I think he was even on the optimal pre-show. It's a 9:00 game. If you play him, there's not really a lot to do. You can't swap to really anybody without taking a big chunk in salary. Would you risk him in a cash game format or even, tournaments you can lock around? We've got 3 of these games going in the 7 to 7:30. Cleveland, Minnesota at 8. I would assume if he's playing by then, but the late swap options off of Markkanen are a little low. What's your take on him?
Yeah, they are. And it's tough. Like, I think if you've got 2 spots open, maybe you can make it work. If you're playing Markkanen at power forward, I mean, I'm looking at FanDuel now because at 8,300 at power forward, if he gets ruled out, you could pivot to Grant, who is like 7K, and I don't think is a horrible option. And then that gives you maybe 1,300 for that other spot. But I don't know. He does grade out well in projections. I personally probably wouldn't risk it. But if the rest of your lineup works and I think you at least need 2 pieces to navigate around. And the other part of the issue is he fits a lot better at small forward because that position is so weak. And that's where there aren't hardly any pivots. So yeah, that's a tough call. And I mean, it all depends on your risk tolerance, I guess. But because, it seems like he is truly 50-50. He was kind of a late add to the injury report, which never feels super exciting.
Yeah, he's the one I think is the most questionable of all the guys that are currently questionable that we talked about to start the show. Couple guys at center you might want to take a look at. We've got, I think, Isaiah Jackson, of course, if he can fit in there, I think is perfectly fine. What else would you want to look at? I know Siakam has been doing pretty good. You can fit him at either, I think is he power forward / center. You could use him at either spot tonight. You've got old man Al Horford as a salary saver. You can mix it around with a Walker Kessler too if you wanted to. I think he's just fine. What do you think about the center position?
Yes, the big man positions are interesting. I mean, Horford was my pivot if Isaiah Jackson wasn't viable, if Miles Turner were to play, but now Turner's been ruled out. So Jackson is the clear play. I mean, if you want to go double cheap and go Jackson and Horford and then spend up at your guards, you can certainly do that. You can play both of them. Kessler too. I mean, the production seems very real. I do worry slightly about foul trouble tonight against Embiid, but this dude's been legit. So he's another cheap option. I think Okongwu is in. I mean, Okongwu had like 60 last night. Yeah. He's probably more of a tournament guy, but and you got this value. I didn't touch on the guards a whole lot for cash games, but you got Jackson, you got Horford, you got the guards for Indiana that we talked about, and this is going to give you the salary to spend up for, one stud for sure in your cash games tonight. So usually the take is if you can fit Luka, play Luka, which I think you can definitely do in cash games tonight. My number 2 choice would be if you can't quite get to Luka, you can just play Jason Tatum in a great matchup against Charlotte. His usage doesn't really change a whole lot with Brown out, but again, Charlotte's a great matchup. Boston's projected for about 120. And you got the cheap guards for Boston as well that you kind of touched on. So you should be able to get one stud in your lineup tonight. For me, it's probably Luka, then Tatum as the second one. And then, Embiid at center would be more of a tournament pivot because in cash games, I think you go cheap here.
What do you think about from a tournament perspective tonight? If I just look at the overall ownership, Isaiah, right? So let's talk about the Indiana guys between Jackson, Hield, Nemhard. Those look like they're, at least from FanDuel, going to be eating up a lot of the ownership. Which one of those is most likely to fail if you're playing multiple lineups? Jackson looks like he's going to be 70, basically close to 100% owned in cash, a little bit lower in tournaments. Is he someone you would click the lock button on tonight?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there is a little bit of risk with him. Obviously, the game was great last night, but I expect the guards to be better without Halliburton. And they do have other bodies there. I mean, they've got Duarte will play some minutes. They've got Jalen Smith. They've got Neesmith. They've got Mathurin. So could also potentially go a little small at times in this game. So it just when you factor in the GPP ownership, I think maybe a little bit of an underweight stance on Jackson is fine. But I expect the guards to be better tonight than they were yesterday.
What kind of tournament takes you got for the people tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think Luka and Tatum, as I mentioned, are my spends in cash games. And again, in GPPs, you got the other guys that are basically going to go unowned. I mean, Memphis has the highest team total on the slate. They're facing Indiana, who plays fast and doesn't play much defense. And yet you've got, 14% ownership, pretty reasonable for a 6-game slate on John Morant, 18% ownership on Desmond Bane. I think those guys are interesting for tournaments. Basically everyone on, Toronto never feels great, but you're not getting a whole lot of ownership there outside of Siakam. So you could consider a Van Vliet or a Scotty Barnes in GPPs as well. Some of these questionable players will have low ownership just because people don't know. Can I play Lillard? Can I play Christian Wood? Can I play Markkanen? And with those being the later games, maybe their ownership goes down a little bit. So if you've got swap options available, you can maybe sprinkle in those guys in GPPs as well. And then, mix and match and change up your lineups if somebody happens to get ruled out.
All right, let's go over to DraftKings. It's sort of the same players. You've got your Indiana guys, Jalen Smith, Buddy Hield, and Nembhard for sure on DraftKings at 4,600 look absolutely amazing. Would you play in cash any of the other Pacers? So we've got Mathurin at 4,900, TJ McConnell at 4,000 on DraftKings. He is basically either like the last guy in or the first guy out of the cash game I'm currently staring at. I think he looks pretty good. How many Pacers is too many over there? I think in theory you could probably play 5, but I think 4 is probably the way to go. You got Jalen Smith too. I mean, it's endless over there.
Yeah, it is. They're just so cheap. Mathurin's cheaper. Jackson's min salary. Nembhard's cheaper. McConnell's cheaper. Jalen Smith is cheaper, particularly McConnell and Smith, who I think are both over 5K on Fanduel. So, yeah, you probably land on 4. Again, for me, it's probably Jackson, Nembhard for sure. And then, Hield, Mathurin, McConnell, maybe 2 of those 3. Jalen Smith, maybe more of a tournament play with his. If you're going underweight on Jackson, put Jalen Smith in some of those GPP lineups. But yeah, you probably do end up with 4 Pacers, I think, in those cash game builds on DraftKings with the salaries.
Yeah, that's sort of what I've landed on as well here. Fitting around that, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to go. There's no one else that I think is a must play, honestly. I mentioned I like Marcus Smart. I think his price is fine. If you land on him, that's good. And there's a lot of ways to go on DraftKings tonight. Of course, you can play Luka. He's 12-8. We're expecting a minimum of 60 fantasy points almost every time he touches the floor, with upside to get 80, 90. I mean, it's literally the highest ceiling fantasy player I think we have right now. I'm just looking for some more news. Bogdanovich got ruled out tonight. Because that doesn't really change too much from
I don't think
Atlanta
so, yeah.
for you.
Not really. Not the greatest matchup for them. And they're 7-point underdogs on the road. So, yeah, it doesn't change a whole lot.
What do you prefer on a site like DraftKings? Would you rather play – I just refreshed the optimal. It's running things like Siakam and Embiid on the top one. Would you rather play sort of those 2 guys, or would you rather reach for Luka and maybe go down a tier from those guys who look really strong tonight?
Yeah, I mean – so Embiid and Siakam, that totals about 20K. So you'd be at like Luka and a 7K player, like a Garland or a Scotty Barnes or a Bane or something like that. I don't think there's a wrong answer there, but the way he's been playing and the limited options that Dallas has offensively, it's hard to not play Luka.
Yeah, it's just Luka is just above and beyond, I think, the expectation of anybody you would want to play. I absolutely like him. If you can get to him, if you can't, I don't mind. I think Embiid against Charlotte's gonna, or not against Charlotte, against Utah with no interior defense should have absolutely no problem putting up a massive game if you can't get up to Luka, and then you can throw some of those other 10K guys around him. But it seems pretty simple on DraftKings from the cash game perspective. Play the Indiana value 3, 4, probably at least 4. You could probably go to 5 if you wanted to really stretch it. Mix in maybe a Celtics player. I do like Mark Spark quite a bit tonight. I like his props. I really like him in DFS. Throw in a couple of the big boys. Find a filler at the last position, and that should probably get you on your way on DraftKings. Any specific salary, tournament, anything takes Jackson? I don't understand. How is Jackson? He's minimum price, but he's going to be lower owned on DraftKings. This makes no sense to me. Maybe it's because of the more rigid position he is over on FanDuel, but
yeah, the position's weak on FanDuel, and he's, you can just plug him in at power forward. But I don't know. I think his ownership will be pretty similar on both sides. I think maybe that DK number is a touch low, or the FanDuel number maybe is a touch high, and he lands somewhere maybe in the 60s. But splitting hairs, I mean, he's a really good play, obviously, on both. And yeah, the DraftKings cap is just a little more loose tonight. Like Okongwu is over 6K on FanDuel. He's 5,600 on DraftKings. Bane is a little easy. So you can probably get another higher end play if you want to on DK. In your tournament builds, maybe you can fit 2 of the top guys together, like mess around with a Luka plus Embiid build or something like that. It seems crazy. But when you look at all the 4K options available, like it is really doable on the slate. So outside of that, there's the Pacers guys are the main ones with the pricing differences between the two sites. Not a whole lot else that pops up as a major difference. Mason Plumlee is another guy you can maybe consider for tournaments. He's been playing real well. The center position is pretty deep tonight. And with most people going value, like most people are either going value or Embiid at center. So the mid-range centers are going to be largely ignored. The Gobert, Nurkic, John Collins types, and Plumlee. So, I think you could sprinkle in somebody like that in some GPP builds too.
Yeah, the Plum Dogs minutes, if you haven't been, they've gone from the 24, 25 range to these, consistently low 30s over the past, week or so for the Hornets, and that's allowed him to perform pretty well along with a couple other injuries. So that's been working pretty good. And I do think that price on Plumlee on DraftKings, you make a good point, is pretty reasonable. Any specific game stacks you might want to target tonight? I know you mentioned the Memphis side. If everyone's playing all the Indiana guys and no one's playing the Memphis guys, I think that does make a little bit of sense to play Ja, to play a Jackson, a Bane. These guys all have a little bit of extra usage tonight. I think that's a little interesting. Good point there. Do you have anything else you're looking at?
Yeah, I like that game. I like the Memphis side of that game. Zaire Williams also has a decent projection on DK, though he's going to get some ownership at just 3,100. Like, it's pretty easy to stack up that game and get some high-end plays around it. So that's definitely a strategy I'll be taking. I think, the Boston game is maybe the one that'll carry a little less ownership on the whole. Yes, the Boston side will get some ownership, but, LaMelo Ball doesn't have a lot of ownership tonight. We just talked about Plumlee. PJ Washington, I know, is never like a bad way to round out a GPP stack. So I think maybe that game would be my second choice. If you're not, if you're trying to go for the later games, like Philly's tough to stack because you get Embiid and, Markkanen on the other side, and they use up a larger chunk of salary. So, probably Memphis, Indiana would be my first choice. And then the Boston game would be my second choice in terms of game stacks.
All right, so let's get to some questions. We got about 10 minutes left. Brock Purdy, I need the 49ers minus 2.5. My under bet is obviously not going to come through, but I used the minus 2.5 teasers and a whole bunch of things. So let's go 49ers. It looks like Brock Purdy, starting quarterback for the 49ers, is there's no way they don't let this dude play next year.
Yeah, you can't at this point. He's been very impressive and probably the the most heralded Mr. Irrelevant from an NFL draft to, suddenly, boom, be the starting quarterback on a team that's won like 10 games in a row. And it's been pretty incredible. Obviously, he's got a good supporting cast around him and a great defense, but pretty good story for sure.
Yeah, unless he does something absolutely horrific in one of these playoff games, I don't know. I think you almost have to roll with him next year. Anyway, sorry for getting sidetracked. Going to take questions. NBA Crunch Time Discord for you premium members. The YouTube for everybody else. I don't see any in Crunch Time. Premium members, get in there. I will give you some priority. Let's go to YouTube first here. O'Shea Brissett, is he out of play now? I think definitely a tournament option. And specifically, who on the Pacers would you not play in place of Brissett, hoping that maybe they falter and Brissett gets extra run?
Yeah, I mean, Jackson is the obvious one. I think, Brissett's going to get some extra run if Jackson struggles or gets in foul trouble. So for that reason, yeah, I think Brissett, his projection has kind of come down throughout the day. But, I still think he's viable. Just so many Pacers to choose from. Mainly viable because the forward positions are the weakest. But, Brissett, Nesmith, Jalen Smith, like those would be your GPP pivots away from Isaiah Jackson.
Derek and YouTube wanted to know, what do we think about Robert Williams instead of Horford tonight, trying to maybe get a little different, this is a 4-to-1 ownership percentage swap and a projection that's only 3 points apart in the NBA. Anything can happen. Are we interested in making that switch at all tonight?
I don't think it's a horrible idea. I mean, he did see 29 minutes the last game. The per-minute production usually is pretty good for him. So a little bit of an outlier there with that last one. If he's getting up over 30 minutes in the long run, I think there's interesting appeal there. So, yeah, I like him in tournaments. I don't think you go crazy there. And it's more of a DK play, 6,000 on FanDuel, but 4,900 on DK. I think he's viable. So, yeah, I think he's all right.
We've got Tisha wants to know how many Pacers is too many. She, I'm not exactly sure, keeps getting a bunch of Pacers. I think from a cash game perspective, you're probably looking a minimum of, you probably have 4 on FanDuel and probably 4 or 5 on DraftKings. From a tournament perspective, anyone using an optimizer on any site tonight's going to end up with, I don't know, like a minimum of 3 of these in every lineup, no matter what you do, unless you're specifically restricting them. Do you see any builds that you might not want to play any Pacers? Which ones may be the most likely to bust of all the guys that are to be high owned? How would you approach all that?
Yeah, I mean, they can't all bust because they're all cheap and they're, both of these teams are top 6 in tempo. So it's going to be a high scoring game. I mean, bet the under, I guess, if you think they're all going to struggle.
Play the Pacers, bet the under.
There's your hedge. But, you can. I mean, I think the way to play it in GPPs is to just play a couple of them and hope the production is you get the right guys, right? Like Hield goes nuts or Nemar goes nuts. And those are the 2 guys that you have. I don't think you can fade them entirely. I get the logic of not wanting to play 4 or 5 of them because the likelihood that they all have ceiling games that you need to have is pretty low. But, I think you got to play a couple. I mean, outside of a game stack of another game or something, I think you got to pick a couple. I think in terms of floor, I mean, the lowest floor that we have would be of those cheaper guys. Let's see, we've got Hield with a floor of 25, Mathurin 22, Nembhard 20, Jackson 19.9. So, Jackson, I guess, logically, but he's also min salary. So there's no wrong answer here, and they're all going to project well. I think my answer is pick a couple that you feel the best on and go with them.
Let's see if I got any other questions. Sugar Ray in the Discord wants to know about LeVert. So LeVert is a yes if Donovan Mitchell's out. In current situation, LeVert is easy pass for me, and I don't know, probably every format right now.
Yeah. You're not playing him now. We got to wait on news with Mitchell before we can consider him because the floor is very low if Mitchell plays.
Yeah, if anyone sees anything in the next couple of minutes, please let us know. Donovan Mitchell will play. There we go. The gods have answered me. So Donovan Mitchell's in. That would be a no to LeVert. I think you can still play Garland. Probably more of a tournament play. I do like him on FanDuel as a fringe cash play as well. All right, back to YouTube. A couple more questions. Let me see if I can find any. I don't see any. Going to Discord, Luke Cage wants to know, McConnell or Swinio spend up for Smart on a DraftKings tournament? So I definitely like Smart if you can make it work. What's your outcome for TJ McConnell tonight, right? So the minutes are he's not going to get 30 plus minutes tonight. I don't think, unless he gets super hot, but even in that, I really don't see it. He got 24 in the last game, 26 the game before, 35 and 38 DraftKings points. I mean, he can get there. Obviously, he can have those type of performances. He's done it in back-to-back games. So do you prefer saving a little bit of money to play McConnell instead of Smart? That's $1,900 DraftKings dollars.
No, not necessarily. I think the floor on McConnell is somewhat risky, and obviously he was great last night, but still only played 24 minutes. So, I like getting to Smart if you can fit him in there.
We've got Dinwiddie or Smart. I mean, that's not even really a question for me tonight. That is Smart without question. Dinwiddie's just having a very, man type of season. I'm kind of sad for Luka. He doesn't really have I can't believe there's not a better team around him right now.
There's nobody.
Yeah, it's not really a great. Christian Wood is he's great for fantasy. I don't know if he's the best NBA player, but that team, I don't know. I just don't understand why people I want to go play with Luka. Let's go win, because he would obviously dominate if he had even another reasonably top 30, 40 player or anything like that. Right. It's kind of crazy that hasn't happened yet. All right, so we got about 3 minutes for questions. I don't see any more coming in. Oh, actually, YouTube's got a couple here. TJ McConnell over or under Steph Curry's minutes from last night. So what did Steph play? Like 25, 24, something like that? It wasn't really too many, right?
Yeah, we've got McConnell at 23, so yeah, that's about. That's right around where he's going to be. It's tough. I think that line's about right.
They want to know, Naismith, does he have a ceiling tonight in his current role?
No, he's not really a ceiling type of player, because, like, you look at his usage. 14%, 12%, 17%, 20%, 12%. Like, he's not a 30% usage guy. So, we got him projected for 23. The ceiling is probably 35 or so. He's had 15, 6, and 2 with 4 steals the other night. Last game he played, and he still only got to 33. So, yeah, he's not going to get you 50.
Let's see here. Any more? Don't see anything in YouTube. I don't see anything on here. I'm going to try to get a couple more. You got any bets you're looking at? I mentioned Marcus Smart double, Marcus Smart over 13.5 points. Those are 2 I've bet a significant amount on tonight. You got anything you were looking at?
Yeah, let's take a look here at what all right, so I took I took Portland -2 against Dallas, assuming Lillard plays at home. Again, if Lillard is out, that's a risky bet, and I took the under in the Sixers Jazz game as well. I just don't think that game in Utah is going to have quite the pace, and then that total seemed a couple points too high to me. I honestly don't think, even though I really like it for DFS, I don't mind the under in that Pacers Grizzlies game as well. It was 236 to start the day. It's 241 now. So, that's just a big number for Indiana being down a couple of their top offensive guys, and Memphis is still fairly good defensively, even though they play fast. So, stack like the whole stack it up in DFS and still play the under. I really don't think that's a bad bet. Just because 241, it's been steamed up pretty good there.
All right. Let's see, Hardaway or Mathurian for a FanDuel tournament.
Yeah, give me Mathurin. Again, Dallas. Hardaway the shots have to fall for him to have any sort of ceiling, and I don't trust it.
A prop to go with Smart points on Prize Picks. It just locked, so you're probably not going to be in there. What's on Sunday? Richie James over 4 receptions is my lock on Prize Picks if anyone was looking for that. But you're not going to be able to get that in because I believe the Boston game locked, and they don't let you, the sports books, they let you play the tip-off. FanDuel does, but the prop sites, they lock it right away for basketball. I don't like that. So I was probably going to try to get that. And I bet that on the sports book, maybe even on FanDuel. I think I might have had the best line for it earlier in the day. All right, so that's some basketball talk. We're going to do football, not with you, Cards, unfortunately. In just a little bit, I'm going to be back on the football show for a showdown show. What do you think is going to happen in this Chargers-Jags game? I got the Jags winning straight up. I got them on the spread. I think they're the better team. I think Vegas got this wrong. What's your overall take on this game?
Yeah, I do kind of like the Jags as well. I think, they've already beaten them once. I think you see a better performance out of Trevor Lawrence tonight. I mean, basically, he's got a playoff game under his belt because last week is pretty much what that was. And they didn't really do a whole lot offensively. And I think there's a little bit of recency bias in there. So I am with you. I like the Jags as well tonight.
Yeah, I like that. You got a favorite prop bet? Eckler, 37.5 yards over. That's my one. I put that out. It's on Scores and Odds, but I gave it out for free. So that was my favorite prop for tonight. You got anything?
Yeah, I like the overs on. I wouldn't, you don't necessarily have to play them all together unless you're doing a same game parlay or something like that. But over on the Lawrence, Kirk, Zay Jones props for me tonight.
I will say FanDuel has a nice promo. You guys can still take advantage of it. It's same game parlays for football. So you missed the first game, but if you spend, it's like a minimum of $20. You get extra bets. If you spend, the max for the promo is $200. So if you make $200 worth of same game parlays for NFL, there's rules. You got to be plus 400, a certain amount of legs, et cetera, et cetera. I'll read the rules. They give you $100 in free bets. So like you can take some shots on these to try to win some plus 1,000, plus 1,500 because you're getting $100 free bet back. And then if you bink on, so how I play these, and I don't know, I'm sure you play these too, Justin, because the promos are too good to pass up. So I go from I try to hit those plus 600 to plus 1,000. Then if I bink one, right, I'm free rolling the free bet. I go for a monster bet with that free bet because I've already binked it and they gave it to me basically for free. So that's how I try to play when the FanDuel runs these type of game parlay promos for the playoffs. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a great way to do it.
Yeah, so go check that out. It is our sponsor, FanDuel, and they're running that promo. If you do have access to the sports books, make sure to go check that out. Those are must plays when they offer them. I know generally same game parlays don't have the greatest odds, but when you're spending $200 to get $100 free bet back, even if you miss everything, I'm willing to take some shots on those. That's going to do it for today. Tune back in just a little bit before kickoff for the Chargers-Jaguars game. I'll be back on here for a showdown show. Other than that, Justin, it's been fun. I'm Britt. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we out ya.